Rama 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 Bhagwan Shri Yogi Ramsuratkumar ki Sarvam Yogi Ramsuratkumar Arpanam. That was a great blessing. His kindness again and again expressed in terms of Nama Sankirtan. Without his grace, this would not have been possible at all. We would have found 100 excuses to keep away from this. All our heartfelt, soulful thanks to Bhagwan's lotus feet. Today, as we have been seeing glimpses of Bhagwan's glory, the facets of the diamond, we shall have one more glimpse. This is a personal experience of mine where we see how demanding Guru is. Either you give all or you go away. No half measures. Bhagwan always liked people to come to him straight and go back straight home or wherever they came from. He would not want them to loiter around after taking blessings from him. Nor would he want them to go here and there before arriving at his door. These great masters, they do intense, hard penance to earn their bounties. And they give it away for pittance. All you have to do is come to the ashram and go out. You wouldn't even be aware how much you are taking with you. A huge bag of blessings just by entering the ashram and going out. So naturally, Bhagwan was very strict about this, that people should come straight to him and go back straight. The precious energy that he poured into us must be put to use in full swing. I learned my lesson the hard way. The only time I ever came on my way, I ever came to Bhagwan on my way to Chennai. And I dearly paid for it. But then it took me a hard blow to learn the lesson the right way. Once, from Salem, I had to go to Chennai for something. I had to go home. At the time, I was still living with my people, father, mother, and others, and I had to go for something. And then the desire came. I thought I could put it to use. I could have Darshan of Bhagwan. I could come to Tiruvannamalai, and from Tiruvannamalai to Chennai. Little did I realize what was awaiting me. So here I was, got up at 2 o'clock, managed to go and be in Tiruvannamalai at 9 o'clock promptly at Bhagwan's door. And I wanted to, usually what we did was make noise with the latch. And then Bhagwan would hear it. And of course, not that he did not know who was at the door, even before we made the noise, but there was a protocol. And I was so scared to do that. I looked up here. I looked here and there, and then up there to the mandap. And there, at that time, Bhagwan's attendant was probably 7 or 10 years boy. I called out to him, so he came down running, and then I said, "Will you please make this noise with the latch so that Bhagwan would hear it?" He gave me one stare, a frown, and said, "You want to have this darshan? You have to do it. Why do you ask me to do it?" What a lesson. Here I was thinking, even the little boy attendant spoke like Bhagwan, sharp and to the point, making his the lesson that we needed to learn. I said, okay. And then somehow I gathered enough strength to make the noise with the latch. And soon, there is a hole there in the wooden door. And we used to look there. And usually, it would be filled with the light from the backyard of Bhagwan's house. There's a corridor in the back of the house, and Bhagwan used to keep the door open, so there would be light. And then if Bhagwan was coming, there would be some movement there, which you could observe through the hole. So I saw the movement, and I knew Bhagwan was coming. I was so happy. And then Bhagwan opened the wooden door, came straight to the grill gate. And he even put out his hand to open that. And suddenly, he took his hand back and turned his back to me. He had not opened the grill gate at all. Instead, he turned round and showed his back to me. Now here, I must tell you something. When I was coming from Salem by bus, I was carrying a book of Swami Shivananda, where usually I would come chanting his name and praying that I should have his darshan. And that time, somehow, I was engaged in reading that book. And there, Swami Shivananda was describing how a great master would test his disciples time and again to make sure that they learned well. That it was important for the master to do that for the growth of the disciple. I was thinking, my God, isn't that what I am going through also? And then, anyway, when I stood there in front of Bhagwan's house, when Bhagwan turned his back upon me, and he asked from there, you can go wait in the temple. He gave me to understand that I should wait in the temple and that he would come to give darshan to me. This is what I understood, because it was very suggestive in his statement. And then I thought, okay, even though he's not calling me inside, he's assuring me that I would have his darshan. So I was very happy. So I prostrated from outside and I hurried to the temple thinking that Bhagwan would come any moment. He could come within 5 minutes or 5 hours. So I almost ran to the temple and to the mandap where the elephant was tied. The mahout was there. I went and sat comfortably in a place where I could overlook the entrance so that I wouldn't miss out when he entered. So my eyes were riveted on the entrance all the time. And I sat and started to chant his name. I was chanting and chanting and chanting and looking over upon the entrance. 1 hour passed. Well, only 1 hour passed. Another hour passed. That's okay, only 2 hours. And then the 3rd hour, that's fine. 3 hours is nothing. I would get his darshan, wouldn't I? The mahout was watching all the time. And now and then I would look at the elephant. And the elephant was constantly moving its head, the trunk, and the head. It reminded me of the human mind. How restless the mind is. All the time, the movement of the mind meant thoughts and thoughts and thoughts. And the Mahout was there by his side very symbolically, because it was he who could control that. And I was thinking, okay, my Mahout has asked me to wait there. And in the meantime, my mind should be moving up and down the Nama. So I was chanting, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar, Yogi Ramsuratkumar. The mantra that he taught me was only Yogi Ramsuratkumar, not Jaya Guru Raya. He made me repeat this mantra. The very first time I had his darshan, he made me repeat this 3 times. So ever since I had been chanting only Yogi Ramsuratkumar. Three hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. The Mahout was getting restless, looking at me all the time. So he was trying to draw my attention to say that I should not trust this madman. He asked me why I was sitting there. I had to tell him. I thought it was harmless. I said, yes, I am waiting for Swami to come. He said, oh, that Swami, he is mad. Don't expect him to keep his word. He is absolutely mad. He would do anything. There is no binding him. I said, that's okay. He is God himself. Whatever he did was all right with me. And he had promised to come and give darshan. So it's not for me to think that he wouldn't come. So another hour passed. It was now 2 o'clock. From 9 o'clock, I started at 2 o'clock from the hostel where I was staying in Salem. Now it was 2 o'clock afternoon, 12 hours since I started. And again, the Mahout was trying to draw my attention, but now I knew he was telling me something very negative all the time, so I wouldn't even look his side. But again I thought, how symbolic that the elephant was nodding his head all the time. And my mind was going up and down the Nama, in tune with his nod. But the Mahout was missing. I didn't realize the Nama itself is Mahout. I was expecting the Nami to come, to appear before me. And then, 3 o'clock, now this time the Mahout was very loud. He said, Amma, what are you doing? He is mad, all right, but you are also mad. Why would you wait like this? That man is not going to come. I've been seeing you, you are not even drinking water, not taking anything. Go have something and come back and sit. I thought strictly it was none of his business what I did with myself. And surely it was not his business at all to comment on Bhagwan. But then, without my knowledge, what he said was influencing me. And I began to think, oh my God, it is now 13 hours and I hadn't had anything at all. I had not eaten even the previous day night in all excitement of my coming the next day early morning. And the minute I thought like that, I began to feel thirsty. Just see the psychology. As long as my eyes were riveted in the entrance, expecting Bhagwan, I was not even aware of my body and its needs. I was not aware I was feeling thirsty. But the minute he put the idea into my head, it started to work, and suddenly I felt very thirsty. And then I waited for another half an hour. It was 3:30 now. And then this added pressure was there because I had to go to Chennai. I knew nobody in Tiruvannamalai to spend the night. And before that, it happened once. I had gone there, no darshan, and I had no mind. I had no heart to leave the place without his darshan. So I went to one of the houses there in Sanadi Street, and I found some space outside. The people had closed their door. The outside was open, so I spent the night there alone. Now I had to go. I had informed my people I was coming. I knew my mother would be waiting and waiting and waiting. So that when the thought came of the home, mother, the body, I could not sit there anymore. I got up. I became very curious whether he was there at all at his residence or gone out somewhere. So I slowly sauntered. I slowly came out and I wanted to go via that small lane to see if there was anything visible there. But the door was left as it was in the morning. He was not seated outside. The wooden door was still closed. So I thought, okay, Bhagwan is inside. So he may come out any time. I should go. I'll hurry to a shop and take some lemon water. That's all I could drink at that time. So I went and had a cup of lemon water, came back, and this time when I stood there, I had this feeling, hadn't I waited so many hours? So I have every right to now knock at the door and call out. Just see, even tapas can give rise to ego. The ego is lurking all the time to rear its head at the most unexpected moments. We do not know how it is provoked, but it is. So with a trace of resentment and the ego that I had spent so many hours waiting for him, I made the noise with the latch, and this time again I saw the hole and there was movement and I knew he was coming. He came, he opened the wooden door. Just like morning, he came straight to the grill gate. And this time, because I had waited for so long, he opened the door. So I could have my eyes full of him. But then the next thing that he spoke was, "You have seen this beggar, you can go." I was stunned. I had waited for so long, chanting his name, fasting and chanting. And he gave me the hope in the morning that he was going to come, give me darshan. And now all that he could say, "You can go." I couldn't believe my ears and I looked up at him, gaping. He said, "Where are you going from here?" I had to say Chennai. Then he said, "Chennai is full of bad vibe." Madras, in those days it was Madras. So he said, Madras is full of bad vibrations. Okay, you can go to Madras. And then, before I said anything, he closed the grill gate, walked inside his house and closed the wooden door also firmly. You can imagine my plight, how I would have felt at that time. It looked as though a shell exploded on my head. I was shattered. I had no idea what was happening to me. There was the spring of tears, and they began to stream down. I was trembling. I felt terrible. It was already now 4:30, I think. Even to reach Madras, it would be very late in those days. But yet, I had little else to do. So I began to stagger my way to the bus stand. All the time crying, I could not contain my tears. I was past the embarrassment it would cause, my tears being seen by people. I just didn't care who observed me and what they thought of me. All I could think of was this disappointment, this terrible sense of loss. And somehow I reached the bus stand, and there was this bus to Madras just waiting, and I boarded it. Again, after I was seated, the tears continued, completely out of control. They were pouring out. I couldn't help it, nor did I bother. So all the way to Chennai, I was crying for all the people to see, unmindful of their reactions. And all I could think of was, how could you do this to me? How could you do it to me? Didn't it matter to you? How could you do this to me? So this was it. And then everybody began to watch, I think, but though I was not aware at the time. At a certain point, a lady came and sat next to me, and she said, very tenderly, she said, has anybody passed away at home? Anybody died? Someone very close to you? Don't cry. Think of God. He will give you strength. Who has passed away? And that's when I woke up startled to the reality of the situation. I looked at her blank. I didn't even hear her properly. Though of course, the understanding dawned on me that she was under the impression that somebody had died very close to me. So that is when I became aware that everybody was looking at me. I could see some of those necks twisting to have a look at me. It was an embarrassment, but then I did not answer her. I turned my face away, and she got the message. She kept quiet, and after some time she got down. Now, once again, waves and waves of sorrow, grief-stricken. Again it started to pour, and I thought I had reached the very edge of this grief, that I had reached the abysmal depth of what I thought was grief. And just then, I found a lake by the side, and then vaguely I remembered it was Madurantakam. Then I remembered Rama's temple. So I was just looking for Rama's temple, and suddenly I could cry no more. And what was strange, waves and waves of bliss began to well up. Like a spring from the depth of my heart, something happened, and there was a sudden turnaround, and I felt waves and waves and waves of bliss washing over me from head to foot. Every pore of my being filled with the bliss of the divine. And again, I lost control. I lost the sense of space and time. I was not aware of who was with me and where I was going. I was completely under the sway of this bliss. And I remember I heard my own laughter. I was laughing, crying and laughing. No idea what was happening and how I was reacting to the whole experience. It simply took over, uncontrollably. Now again, I knew I was the target. Everybody was looking towards me. Again, I didn't care one way or the other. Those waves and waves continued. And then it was about 11:30 when I reached Chennai, then Madras. And then the conductor was watching me all the while. He came and said, "Amma, your place has come. You have to get down now. Everyone else has got down. You're the only one sitting." Then I came back to this world completely startled. And then I got down slowly. It was 11:30, nearing midnight. I had to go to Habibullah Road. And I had no idea of the address because those people had just shifted to another place, a place in Habibullah Road. It was new to me. And it was nearing midnight and I was all alone and completely out of control. How would I go? Where would I go? I still had not come out of the experience, and suddenly an auto came forward of its own accord. And there was this driver. He said, "Amma, get inside." I simply obeyed him without thinking. I did not even see his face. He said it in a certain tone that I immediately got inside. He didn't even ask me where I was going. It took some time before I realized. He didn't ask me, and I was traveling alone at midnight. Even I had no idea where the address was, except that the Habibullah Road and the building's name. And suddenly, I woke up to the reality of the situation. And the first reaction was, what am I doing? Midnight? And this man, a total stranger, he didn't even ask me where I was going, and he was going already on the road. Anything could happen. Suddenly, I panicked. Because the brain had started to work. So the reaction started. I panicked and I did not say anything, but it's as though the driver knew what I was thinking. He turned immediately towards me with a certain smile, a strange smile, and said, "Sister, don't be afraid. I will drop you at your address. Please don't be afraid. You are safe with me." Again, I thought it was very strange that without my voicing out anything, that he should turn to me with a smile and give me this word of assurance. And then he asked me what the address was, and I told him. And within half an hour, he took me to Habibullah Road and he said, look, we are on the road now that you mentioned. You give me the address. And then I gave it to him. By then, I started to trust him. And then he took me right in front of the building, and then when I offered the money, he took it quietly, smiled and said, sister, you go up. When some relative, if I could see you with some relative of yours, then I would go. I want to make sure that you go to your house. And true to his word, he was standing there. I climbed up. My mother came out. And then from there I saw he was looking up. And then he waved his hand with a beautiful smile and left the place. My mother was asking me, my God, you came alone in an auto at this time? You are crazy. Why would you do such things? I was in no position to answer her, but suddenly a strange feeling took over, and I knew instantly that driver was no ordinary driver. And in a flash, it struck me that it was Bhagwan. That he made sure I reached home safely. It just dawned on me the sure knowledge that it was he. Now that day, that was the first time I had come to see Bhagwan on the way to some place. That he was one of the programs. And that was the last time too. I never repeated it again because I knew that if I came to see him at all, it was only for his sake. And then I should go back immediately to the place where I came from. The message was loud and clear. I never missed it. This is the way the great masters teach us. However hard the lesson is, whatever we are put through, one hell after the other, in the end there is bliss. The very sorrow, the deep sorrow, there's a very thin line of demarcation between the two depths, the depth of sorrow and the depth of bliss. What a strange experience I had. He gave me both. He made me go through hell for what I did, because he was one of the programs. He wanted me to be the only program of my life. I had no idea at that time, but I learnt it the hard way. Even now, always with Bhagwan, it was that. He often said, this beggar would like people to come straight to this beggar and go back straight. This beggar doesn't want people to go here and there after coming to this beggar. Father's blessings are precious. They should not scatter it around. They should not waste it. They should not be distracted by this and that. So here you are. The same Bhagwan is here right in front of us. The Murti of the Bhagwan. It is no Murti. It is he himself, with a smile on his lips and the eyes in deep samadhi, and yet the compassion has made his hand raise in a gesture of blessing. And the whole ashram is filled with his grace and power. Now we shall submit today's prayers at his feet.